Looking for a place to speak your truth? This podcast is on an endless pursuit to build through entrepreneurship, empowerment, and creativity. Through thought-provoking content and a fearlessness to dive into untouched topics with an undeniable dedication to highlighting others who are often overlooked. This is Deep Conversations.
Stay tuned for Deep Conversation Podcast.
Welcome to Deep Conversations Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, and today I am here with Miss Chloe. She is I'm gonna call her a big dog because all the accomplishments that she has, it's very impressive. You know, she's collaborated with a lot of different big businesses. And Miss Chloe, before we start, I want to before we dive into your businesses and how important you are to the working space, I want to kind of jump into where it all started with you, because it all started with an idea and a dream. So can you take us back to when you envisioned this dream?
That's a good question. If we go back to the beginning, it begins with me and my mom. My mom immigrated here from St. Vincent. I'm the first generation from her side, American. My dad loved him to death, great father. Unfortunately, growing up in the music industry with him, he got caught up with drugs, crime and stuff like that. So I left my mom as a single mom for a while. And we went through struggle. You know, she didn't have enough to feed the both of us. She only had money to buy like a crib for me, no bed for her. And she did the best to disguise it. So like, I didn't know, I was always, dripped in nice clothes and, always ate well. But she would always say that like she would try to feed me and not feed herself. And I would always be like, nah, if I take a bite, you take a bite. So she'll be like, all right, well, you eat the meat, I'll eat the bread. And I'm like, nah, I'll take a bite of the meat, you take it. And this has been since 3. Fast forward, my want to help people flourish was just something that was burning inside of me. I just knew that I had to be the person, like when the hard thing needed to be done, that it was my job to do it. And I didn't know where it came from, but I understood the task. Cruella DeVille has been one of my favorite. My girl Cruella, I got her everywhere. I remember watching 101 Dalmatians with my mom, and I just remember her being this powerful, unapologetic woman. And I'm like, they're like looking at her as the villain because she's a woman. You know, if she was a man doing all of this, we wouldn't look at her as the villain. And I turned to my mom because she must have scolded me for something or punished me. And I was like, when I get my house and my mansion, I'm going to stick my dogs at the gates for you when you try to come visit me. Well, I knew since I was smaller that I had this bigger, concept of what life was supposed to be for us versus where we were and where we were going. And then as I studied and learned more spiritually, I aligned with the Most High God always first. And I asked for knowledge. I came across astrology and human design. So I found out that my actual purpose is to help individuals flourish whilst they're helping community flourish.
Wow.
So I've always felt it, but to come to that actual reading and see that in my human design it just came full circle for me. And I'm like, absolutely. So I don't know where it specifically started. I knew that from inception, my concept was like, if I eat meat, you eat meat. So I like steak, I like T-bone, I like expensive cut. So when I coach, when I consult, when I give information, I don't keep the best for myself and give you the scraps. Like when I was a little girl with my mom, I give you whatever I put on my table, you should be able to put on yours. And I just know that's always been my moral compass. But my purpose is to actually help people flourish that impact community. So I help leaders, basically.
It's funny as I'm listening to you, when I was reading over and going over your bio and listening to I was reading your website, and I picked that up as just what you just said. I picked that up, and I got a few questions just from later on, down the line as the interview goes on. I got some questions about that, but as I was reading again, you have an extensive accomplishment of degrees. So, but the two the two that I kind of want to stick with is the two master's degrees in business entertainment and public administration. Can you
Mhm,
explain the importance of what those did to help better
mhm.
polish your brand?
So my MPA is in policy writing, and
Mm,
knowing how to structure words and structure solutions is what I would say policy writing has armed me with in a way that is different from other degrees, like just regular business. Because
mhm,
in policy writing, you can't just come up with one policy. Like in your policy, you can't say, hey, this is a solution. You have to come up with at least three solutions, different criterias for each solution of why this would work, so that whichever one is picked for the policy can move forward. You can't just come with one. So it
right.
automatically puts you in the thought process of having three roads to this end, right? You're not comfortable on just A. As an entrepreneur, I felt like that was so impactful for me because there's so many times where we try one road and it fails and we're like, this wasn't it. But if you come in with that same concept, like a policy writer, that I'm going to come up with at least three ways each time I sit down for something. And
Mm,
when plan A, hopefully plan A works, right? But
right.
if it doesn't, you have B, C, and if you need to go to D, E, F, the next time you sit down, you come up with three more structured plans. But I really enjoyed policy writing because I knew that, again, I wanted to create impact in the world. I knew that I wanted change for community and I wanted to be a part of that voice. And while I was in my policy writing degree, and I got my master's, I met my husband and ended up opening up my music production company. So, but when I met him, I was working for the Department of Homeless Services. We had a contract where we helped people coming out of the shelter re-enter into community, and get all the benefits and support that they needed so they didn't have to return to the shelter.
Mhm.
What's crazy is that's what I wrote for my policy is the revolving door path. Yeah, that's what I wrote that got published in my MPA, and I ended up in that same seat by accident. Like someone got me a job in that situation from when I met me at another job, and I'm like, wow, I wrote about this in my MPA that I wrote about path. So I ended up going back, tired of Googling stuff when we opened up the music production company and, word of mouth. So I ended up getting a second degree in entertainment business to support the music production company.
Ain't that something though? How I know, all the things that you've been through, but just the ideas that you have. Ain't it something as time goes on, how those visions and things that you had, it just God places you in places that are
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
always like it always blows your mind because you're like, man, it's I do remember thinking about that. Even when you're not paying attention to it no more,
Absolutely.
he places you in those places. Now, you being known as the first and youngest African American woman to own
Mhm,
and operate, like you said, the music production,
mhm.
Brook Brothers.
Brook Brothers stands for Brooklyn Brothers.
Yeah. So how did you kind of went into it a little bit, but how did that start, and what have you learned owning a space like that?
So, met my husband, and growing up in the music industry, we were friends at first. Excuse me.
Mhm.
And he told me he was a musician. I was like, oh, my dad is a musician. And at that time, I was interested in being a songwriter. I was working with a guy who had a deal with Sony, and he wanted to sign me under his production company as a songwriter.
Mhm.
And when I met my husband, I came with my songs. I was feeling myself. He was like, "Yeah, those songs are okay, but I really feel like you'd be great for us in business." And I was like, "What? I do nothing. Like, what are you talking about?" And he was like,
Yeah.
"There's something about you. There's like this aura, the way that you present your ideas." Because I'm always the person who'll come and be like, "Oh, we could do this way, and this would, make things
Mhm.
easier." But I never thought of it as like this should be my career, my path. And he was very persistent. He's a Sagittarius like myself. And, he asked me to join as the manager at first, and I was like, "Absolutely not." And then he just started telling people I was the manager, and then I became the CEO, and I incorporated and got us our first space. So there was one day that they were playing the catalog, and, no disrespect to, like, niche producers who only do
Mhm.
one type of sound, um, they played this extensive catalog from classical music to hip hop to trap to jazz music. We actually did a song with Baby Wolf, who is one of the best jazz, musicians from the actual Wolf, Baby Wolf, right? His protege. And we did a song with him. And I remember when he played the catalog for me, he sat back. He was like, "I don't think there's anything we can't create." And I knew at that moment I had to be a part of this movement and allowing the world to experience, what I had just experienced. And then we had a 5-year plan that I was able to execute in 5 months. And that's when I started to learn the core foundations of business itself.
See, and that goes to show too, your husband, he's seen something in you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing too how marriage can work, how marriage works, because he's seen something in you that you knew you had, but we all need that push sometimes, what I
Yeah.
mean? And then
I didn't see it in that way.
yeah. And,
Mm-hmm.
and for him, he probably was like, I need her to get me, over here. So
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, and that's good. That's how it's supposed to be. A lot of people say marriage is difficult. Me and my wife we always say it's to us, it's not that
It's
that
not
hard.
difficult. There are challenges in anything, but it's
Exactly.
not difficult. Like
No.
when people say it's difficult, I feel like if it's really like that hard, then something in there is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in any friendship, sometimes you and your friends you may butt heads, you may fall out, but
Yeah.
there shouldn't be a certain level of disrespect that happens within that because this happened, you think that this is okay. That's when there's like something else
Yeah.
there's a moral foundation that's missing there.
Yeah. And
You know?
I think there's an expectation
Mm-hmm.
of marriage that some people have, and then after the honeymoon and after the wedding,
Yeah,
there's a expectation that it's supposed to continue to be this
yeah.
loving thing. But real life happens. It's like
Real life happens. Sometimes kids
yeah,
happen,
it's like things are going to happen, and there's going to be ups and downs. But as long as y'all are for
Mhm.
each other and with each other, it's
Yeah.
easy.
Well, mine was the opposite actually. We didn't start off in the honeymoon phase at all. Like I was gonna walk out of the company because of this man. I was like, I cannot deal with him. I'm about to leave the company.
Yeah.
He had a young child when we
Uh-huh.
first, started the business and we first started dating. So there was issues, with that. Of course, the family knew the other person, so there was issues with that. So I
Mhm.
would say for the first 5 years, we didn't get to the honeymoon phase. So the good thing about us is because we went through les struggles in the
Yeah.
beginning, we're like now ascending honeymoon after honeymoon. Like every time we go through something, we overcome it 10 times more.
Mhm.
Um, and we get to a different level of euphoria. But it's just those real conversations that people are
Mhm.
afraid to have. Like I've had the conversations. Is an open relationship something you want? Do these are the questions that people are shying away from, but these are the questions that you need to know about your partner.
Yeah.
How do you think about finances? What does your credit look like? Are you a one woman man? And if not, what does that look like for us? If everyone's relationship is different. And I've always
Mhm.
been the type of woman where and this some people don't even know about me. I've always been the type of woman where I wouldn't say it wouldn't really bother me, but I didn't focus on if a man was sleeping with other people or not, or felt like that means there wasn't love here, because it was just a physical act to me before I met my husband.
Right.
So when I had these conversations with him, I'm like, is that something that you want? Because we can talk about that. And he was like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
The only thing I want is my wife, and that's why I got married. And he was like, no disrespect to whoever has an open relationship, but for him, he was like, why would you be okay with that? And I'm like, well, I don't think it means that you don't love me. It's a physical act. There's no emotion
Yeah.
attached to it. It's if you fall in love with someone else, I don't think I'll be able to deal with that. But I don't feel like, that's an issue. And then he said something to me that changed my perspective forever. He was like, the alchemy that we create when we come together under that energy should not be replicated elsewhere. Just within the spiritual and the soul ties of that, it should be exclusive to us
Mhm.
once we become man and wife. So you should never be okay with that. It's more than just a physical act. And I was like, well, monogamy it is for us.
Yeah,
You said it
it's,
better than I ever could, brother. You
yeah,
know, so
it's
it's
funny. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I did some stuff on. I did some research on the soul ties, and that's what he just
Mhm.
said. It's way deeper than we could
It's
ever.
so much. And we went through that journey of figuring out those things together because, my husband is a musician. He's a good looking man. He's 6'4". So he has some soul ties that
Yeah,
came with it,
yeah,
and him just trying to, and even understanding our own energies, like him trying to understand like why women would react, and he would get like the worst things that would happen when he left versus these other guys who dog women out and they
yeah,
didn't get what he was getting.
yeah,
And then for me, I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm bad looking, but I'm not the most gorgeous woman in the world. But the way that people would be like obsessive sometimes or become aggressive towards me, and I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I couldn't understand that. We have to be responsible when we wield certain energies as well.
mm,
And you have to be very conscious of the energy that you wield. It's not about, we have the most beautiful women in the world that get cheated on. We got, and then you'll see another woman where this man won't leave her for anything. You're like, physically, you're like, but it doesn't, those things don't matter. The energy, the energy, the friggin' pheromones that she's
yeah,
letting off
yep,
is hypnotic to him. So he can't leave that. So you have to be very careful if you have that kind of attraction that people can become obsessive. If you notice certain things, you have to be responsible within it because people can get hurt.
yeah. Man,
People
you
can
know
get
what?
hurt.
Before we jump back into this, I'm gonna just but I've been so people keep telling me to do some, I guess, relationship kind of
Hmm.
episodes, and I'm like, some of the stuff you see online, I'm like, I don't want to be getting into stuff because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
sometimes I'm like, people crazy, like people got some stuff, and I'm like, I don't, but
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll see as time goes on, but that's a,
Yeah,
that's a
the good
lot of
thing
energy
about it
that can.
it is a lot of energy, and people have asked my husband and I to do it, and we don't wanna do it like anyone else is doing it, of course.
Yeah.
We found fun ways to bring us to it,
Mm-hmm.
games that we could play that are, unique to our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but the good thing about it is that we do need more people who look like us in that position to promote what, Black love looks like, that it
Yeah.
exists. We're young, we're young enough to
Yeah.
be influential,
Yep.
so I feel like there's so much there's always space to show up differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I listen, y'all do it, man. Have fun doing it. That's all that matters. Don't put an expectation on it or just
Yep.
have fun putting the content out. Who needs to see it will see it. Who it needs to impact, it will impact, and
Yeah.
just the example.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I want to get back into, your expertise, everything that you're doing.
Mhm,
So, like I was saying to you earlier, I was reading your website and was listening to you earlier, and your main goal has always been, like you said, to help,
mhm,
and or to be of service. And the Bible says each of you should use whatever gift you have and be of
mhm,
service for each other.
mhm,
So, but sometimes in doing that and being of
mhm.
service for each other, your brain never shuts off
Yeah,
because you're always, especially as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking. And because of that, you created Cloes Corner.
yeah.
So can you talk about that entrepreneurial space that that I've seen that has been exploding since COVID?
Yeah. So the physical space is actually closed. We closed in March of last
Okay.
year. So we are pivoting to a online platform for entrepreneurs to help them flourish while they help community flourish. And the space came about after we closed the recording studio. The the things that I went through, first of all, as a woman in the music industry and being a executive. I'm not a singer. I'm not a songwriter. I'm an executive,
Yeah.
and I felt like the disrespect or the lack of acknowledgement when I walked into a room, people automatically assumed it was my husband. People would shake everyone's hand in the room and not even say hello, and then had to come back because I'm actually the one who's here to cut your check. Um, you know, so creating that, having that experience pushed me to create Women with Voices, my nonprofit, my 501(c)(3, and it also allowed me to use my public administration
Yeah.
masters. And I knew that I wanted to do in-person events and do things like, that there and have an event space. My brother and I actually talked about having an event space. And then I have this saying where I'm like, I'm so Brooklyn. I always thought my sentences when I'm so Brooklyn. So I'm like, I'm so Brooklyn. I'm about to have a space by the Barclays Center. You know,
Yeah.
that's as Brooklyn as it get.
Yeah.
And then I ended up with a space. I got to stop playing. I ended up with a space by the Barclays Center. I wasn't even looking over there, you know? And I didn't have, and I would never tell another person to do this. I didn't have a clear business plan on what was going to happen there. I just
Yeah.
knew this is what I was doing. I'm opening up this space by the Barclays Center. We're going to have events, amazing events there. We're going to do luxury rentals, things like that. And it's going to be the home of women with voices. And so it was. And it attracted so many amazing things that you couldn't put in a business plan. Home to the Bloomberg campaign when he ran for the presidential elect. Like, that's my mayor of my city who made history. And that was the New York City home for the campaign. I had the honor to speak on his behalf when it came to why I still supported him after stop and frisk under his years as a mayor. And that's because I spoke to knowing what he put in as a leader. And, in leadership, it's not about how you fall down, but it's how you get back up. And when I spoke to those things, they were authentic. They weren't scripted. I got no speaking points from his PR team because at that point, we were just dealing with the rental part of this being their home and that partnership, what that looked like for us in community. When I started to speak from my heart on the initiatives and the inside information that I had, his PR team pulled me and was like, wait, we may want to talk to you about being speaking talent. So I would have conversations about how to integrate and how to show. Like, it's just better to show than to tell. I can sit here and talk about it all day, but like these initiatives that he had was the answer of, I can show you better than I could tell you. He answered for those, he atoned for those things in ways that people didn't know. So, that space became a space of just growth, rebirth for people, including, Bloomberg. I had some amazing events there. They shot part of hip hop. One of the Deb Anthony shot part of her. I think it was called Hip Hop Evolution from FX. She shot part of hers there before the studio closed too. A&E shot part of the official Biggie documentary there. So these type of situations. But if you know astrology, I'm a Jupiterian and so is my husband. We're ruled by the planet of luck, and blessings.
What is Scorpio? I'm a
Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, which is the planet of transformation and rebirth. So like the phoenix bird that goes to the ashes and burns, but becomes this beautiful bird. It's that renewal energy is Scorpio. But there's also like intuitive things. A lot of Scorpios can have like psychic abilities or be very intuitive where they know things. And if they listen to that intuition and not thing it off, like you noticing coincidences, at one point you're going to notice these are not coincidences, that you have discernment and that you also are able to foresee things. So it's stepping into understanding the patterns that are happening to you. Yeah.
Now, I kind of want to jump into, because you were talking about the business part. The unfortunate part for me, when it comes to business in our community, in school we're not taught about business, and we kind of we learn about it through the mistakes and the mess ups and everything that we go through. So I want you to talk a little bit about the importance of financial literacy and and the wealth in our health, because I don't know, it's just, as I've gotten older, I'm gonna be 40 this year, and looking at our community and watching the kids and stuff, they really don't know anything about financial literacy. And it's just, I wanna bring that to the forefront, because with us, the things in the business that you're doing and as successful as you are, you can be a role model for a lot of people.
It's so funny. That's what my human design is, 6'3", the role model.
Ooh.
So I told you, is it a coincidence or are you tapping into understanding those Scorpio powers yet? It just happened twice. I'm just saying. So that's a big thing that I teach. And when I ran the label, we ran a label at Brook Brothers. All my artists, we spoke about personal credit. We spoke about them incorporating their names as businesses. We spoke about all those things because we would see so many artists make all this money, blow it, and don't know what's next. They don't got no credit. They don't know, they're using cash when they don't need to. So I implemented those things for the artists so that they understood this is a business and how a business is supposed to flow, cash flow, credit, leveraging sales, knowing what you can authentically monetize on, and flourishing in that way. And I teach that now still. I actually have a contract with the NYPD, and on Wednesdays I teach the youth from 14 to 24 entrepreneurship, and I teach them personal credit, business credit, how to wield this. My company will be absorbing the course to LLC everyone in the program once they're done setting up their business bank account. They'll have a full program, a roadmap on what they're supposed to do, how they're going to monetize their price points, their marketing plan. And these young people are doing so well. For 2 weeks, I had to go in the class via Zoom, and they're like, "Okay, Miss Chloe, we hope you can make it next week." These two Zooms were great. They, one of them got 6 sales after that first week. She got 6 sales, just utilizing some of those strategies. I was so proud. They couldn't wait to come back and tell me on Zoom, but they're like, when your energy is here, you're in the room with us, it's a little different. So I tricked them yesterday because it's raining out here. And I was like, "Oh, I'm coming in from the Zoom." And my partner's setting up the Zoom, and then I bust through the door. It was like really great. But I teach that. And that was actually something I want to talk to our new mayor about is implementing that in 11th and 12th grade. You need to know about business credit. You need to know about bank accounts. You need to know about balancing these accounts. You need to understand the responsibility of utilizing this credit and paying it back, how to count your money, how to understand your profits versus your bills. And I want to create a program that needs to be implemented during school time, because I remember when I went to college at 17, when I first started college. And I remember my mom, she had good credit, but again, she didn't come from here. So she did the best with what she knew. I remember her cutting up my credit cards when they would send those student credit cards. And she was like, "Look at them. They're trying to like ruin my baby's life. They're trying to get her already. She's just starting out here." So I'm looking at her cut up these cards, and I'm like, what is this demon plastic that she's cussing out and throwing away? But had she been able to teach me responsibly from 17 versus me being afraid of credit because it was like, this is here to ruin my life. That's the difference in conversation, but by the time I was, I think 23 or 24, I had met up with a real estate person that I was working with, and I had gotten some houses for some of my friends in their 20s. And I wanted this house, and I wasn't able to get the house because I didn't have credit at that time. So I went to my mom and I'm like, "I need you to stand in my position. I have the down payment. I have all these things. I just need your credit." And she was like, "Well, I don't want to mess my credit up." And I'm like, "Well, you didn't tell me to build mine." You didn't put me in the position. You didn't put me in the game, Ma. So she did. She got me the house, so the house is worth I think 2 million right now, something like that. Yeah, so, and I got 2 friends houses too. So and I got my mom a house out in PA too. And then we I was able to buy back the deed for this one with my brother for her as well. So, we were able to do a lot of things, understanding how to leverage credit. Also, like how to take that to another level is business credit is a whole nother ball game. But I leverage business credit for Cloes Corner. People will come in there and be like, "Oh, I like that couch." I'd be like, "Business credit." They're like, "Oh, those pods are really nice. Those isolation boots." I'm like, "Business credit." I would call everything business credit. That plant is nice, business credit. That's what I named the plant.
But it really is. It really is. And they don't, that's the one thing that I've been learning. When I started the podcast 3 years ago, one of my first guests was a credit expert. And as I was talking to her, I'm like, I never understood people who have 5, 6, 7 credit cards. I said, that's crazy to me. And she was like, I got about 10 of them.
Yeah.
But again, it was because of how we were taught of credit.
It's like you pay all these different bills everywhere.
Yeah,
it's too confusing.
and credit is bad. So I'm like, when she said it, I'm like, that's crazy. But then as time went on and I, was talking with her, and then as I'm getting older, I'm like, credit is, I mean, it's a necessity. As the world's gonna happen, that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be
Mhm.
credit is your credit. It's your credit report for
Yeah.
who you are as you
Mhm.
move through life. So
Yep. It's what people are gonna be able to give you, you know? It's what people can trust to, uh to give to you without you giving them something in return up front.
mhm,
So that plays a really key role in how you're able to navigate. So many people are like, I don't have the money to start the business. But even if you do have the money, and I said this to my class yesterday, if you have $50,000 and your startup cost is 50,000, you don't use the liquid cash. Even if you have the $50,000, why would you use the liquid? You keep the liquid cash for as long as you can. Get a $50,000 credit card or get four, $15,000 credit cards or whatever you need to do,
mhm.
10, 10, 5 or whatever, and then utilize those cards and pay that $500 a month and keep that five or that 50,000 sitting there. You never want to utilize your liquid cash unnecessarily. So you always want to leverage that to get a line of credit and use the line of credit, pay the little bit as you go and have that on reserve. So it's important even if you have money. And I've met a lot of people. I met someone who is a known millionaire that people know from Instagram. And
Mhm.
with having a conversation with him, he's good with stocks, he's good with crypto investments. This man didn't know about business credit. He didn't know about these things. He wasn't leveraging those things. And I was shocked when I because I thought he would know, but I wasn't shocked because I've met other millionaires who still didn't really get it.
He was just using his own
His
money.
money. Maybe even worse, probably his personal credit. Oh.
Ooh, that hurt.
Even more
Golly.
scary. Yeah, probably his personal credit.
Goodness
Oh.
gracious. Man, and it's see, and that goes back to me saying we're never taught those things in school. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You go through just so many different mistakes, and as you get older, unfortunately, you always look back and said, if I would have known,
If I knew that then,
if I knew back then, and it's like it's crazy, and it's for you, another title that you have is a branding expert,
Mhm.
and with that, there's a lot of the thing now is entrepreneurship. There's a lot of this generation is they want to do their own thing and they want to be entrepreneurs. So what do you think are some of the most important tools that they need, in order to excel their business?
Well, I'm actually doing a boot camp, April 1st, and it is
I was
those
going to ask
5.
you about that. I was going to ask you
It
about that.
It is the 5, untold secrets, and that's what they are, they're untold secrets, right? The things that you need to do to structure and launch a seven-figure business, the undeniable 5 things, and as a brand, one of the core things is that unique value proposition, like, what is that makes you so different from someone else that I can't get from them that I know I'm gonna get from you? And it was so funny, I was thinking about, today I'm gonna go live after this and talk about it. When you try to frame yourself to be a brand for everybody, you're talking to nobody.
Wow.
And there's so many times where someone will say something and it's like, well, you're congratulating someone. Like they were congratulating Serena Williams on motherhood, and like this is one of the most amazing things you're going to experience. And then there's people in the comments who is like, well, what about the people who are barren? And we're like, well, unfortunately, if you wanted kids and you're barren and you want to have kids, we're sorry about that. But that this message isn't for you. You know what I mean? Like this isn't for you. Every message isn't for everybody. So you need to figure out what message you have for your tribe that's going to be die hard, uh, repeat buyers, that's going to be the word of mouthers for you that help with that grassroots who's going to show up on every level of your business because they're so in love with the brand because that message is for them. So the more people understand that and the more authentic they show up, they'll be able to connect to that tribe way faster and build a stronger connection. Don't be afraid for those who it's not for. You actually want to say that if this doesn't resonate for you, it's okay. It's not for you. It's for who needs this. This is for who needs this. And if you're not that person that needs this, that's absolutely okay. I'm not for you. Like I'm an entrepreneur coach. I help people flourish as individual brands, businesses, and create impact on community. That's what I do. If you want to scale in your career, right? And you work for a company. I'm not the coach for you. I'm not the coach for you because I teach people systems that they have control over, right? How much money they can make, when they can release something, how they show up as a personal brand. Whereas you're working for a company that controls that for you because you have to go within their guidelines. Now, I can work with the company for them, but as a person who works with a company, it's really what they want. So if I'm working with a company on their branding and their cash flow strategies, then of course it's for the company. So they have the flexibility to change the things. But if you don't, then I'm not the coach for you. I'm not the coach to tell you how to get a great promotion. And that's fine. I'm not trying to be the coach to tell you. But there are coaches that's what they do. They help you with that. So I don't feel bad that that's not what my brand messaging is, or that, I'm missing out on those people. Those are not who I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve who I'm here to serve. So when you're building a brand, you got to know, who is my tribe? Who is my diehard tribe? What am I here to do? What is my purpose for those people? What are the benefits they're going to get from working with me and nobody else? What is unique about how my approach is? And, what are my brand core values and value? What does that mean to me, as well as what does that mean to them? So those are the things you really want to sit in. And there's so many people that are getting caught up with just wanting to build a big brand. They're not sitting on that core value part, because if you don't have values, then that can also diminish your value. So you got to really, and that's actually in the book that I'm working on right now. That should come out later on this year.
As you're talking, I'm resonating with you because, again, like I said, I've had this podcast for 3 years, and I've been building the foundation the right way. A lot of people will say, you should be further along than what you are. But as I'm doing this, I'm learning those values, because when I first started, I said to myself, I wanted to be a podcast that everybody could relate to. And I realized quick that this
You're
ain't
talking
working.
to everybody, talking to nobody. Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, this ain't working. And as those things went on, and kind of like you said in the beginning, when you was trying to open your first business, you said, I really didn't know kind of what I wanted. You had an idea, but you didn't know which way to go with it. And that's how I started. And now, as I'm sitting here 3 years later, it's know who the audience, which is the small business owners, the entrepreneurs, and everybody who's getting in that lane, who wants to learn about this stuff and have different talks about this stuff. That's who I'm talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this ain't for you, this ain't for you, and that's okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love that. I mean, and even within, like, even going back to when I opened up the space, I wasn't sure, and that was the third space I've opened. When I opened up the recording studio, people kept asking me about business credit, all that stuff. So I had to open up another office in that same building, and that was my first consulting firm. So when we closed both of those, that was there for 5 years. The studio was there for 8 years. We closed that, went over to Cloes Corner. Everything that I said, Stars use it as the production hub for Power when they would shoot. I mean, everything that I said has happened. If you think about the timing of it, it was so short, because we're talking about, I launched 2019 of August, and then by February of 2020, the world shut down for 2 years. Right? So I was able to do all of that I'm talking about in a condensed time, because we weren't able to go into the space. So that was a big part, and that was a big lesson. You cannot factor in something like a pandemic into your business plan, but there are things like disruption, business insurance, and things that you may want to look into for if something like this happens, your rent can still be paid, or you can still live. Salaries can be paid. So there are things that you learn along the way. It's a continuous process. But one thing that I did learn about myself, I had this idea. I know that I want to impact people. I got this space, and in a small period of time, I did great things. But for the majority of the time, the space was closed, right? The space was shut down by the government. What I realized is that
it was never about the space, the physical space, but the space I keep for people. So I never needed a brick and mortar. As a matter of fact, the brick and mortar kept me too local. So the space for me had to be bigger. And I can say that now because it was not an easy decision for me to close. It was a very emotional one. And, I was not happy about it when I decided it. I knew what needed to be done, but I couldn't grasp why did God put me here and build this beautiful space? Everybody came here. My people were so inspired for me to close it. And that's because seasons and reasons, right? And I remember getting a flash when I asked that question of that Instagram meme where the little girl has the teddy bear in her hand and Jesus is asking for it back.
Yep.
And she's like, "Are you sure? I love this bear." And behind his back, he got a 5-foot one,
Yeah.
but she got to give up this little bear to get the big one. And I remember when I asked that question, that's the first thing that flashed in front of me was that Instagram post. And when I tell you, it was not a lie, it was not a joke. It was not, it did what it needed to do. I spoke it. I'm so Brooklyn. I had to have a space by the Barclays Center. I did it, and I did it, and I made history there, right? So when we do it, we're going to do it. Same thing with the music production company. We still have a music production company. We still have recording studios, just not for the public. It's just for the team, right? So nothing stopped. We didn't need these brick and mortars, but we were able to experience so many amazing brands, through the time and align with so many like brands that we helped each other flourish during that time. But now it's time for us to step into bigger stages and bigger spaces. If I do open again, one thing's for sure, two things for certain, it's going to be done a completely different way. The whole planning, partnerships, pre-sales, all that jazz is going to be happening before I open up another place.
So I want to talk to you about, I got 3 more questions, but I know you've also created the Cloe Luv Success Academy. So what was the vision for that, and how can people connect and get involved with that?
So Cloe Luv Success Academy is now actually, I got to update that, C3 Global Impact.
Okay.
And it's the same concept of helping entrepreneurs flourish to become the most ideal version of themselves and helping them find fulfillment within that. When I started the Cloe Luv Success Academy, brand morphing was the thing I was really pushing. And brand morphing is that marriage of characteristics, experience, and authentic brand traits to the person. A lot of the times people have these businesses and the business doesn't have a forefront for a personal brand. So when I help people with businesses, you got to know that you have to be a leader. You have to be a role model for the community. And there has to be someone who is the face for everyone to fall in love with. But then the business itself, the brand experience I'm having with the product or the service, that has to be just as elite as the face of the company. So the marriage, they're 2 different buildups, but they go hand in hand. And that was the only thing I was talking about at the time, because it's so important and people bypass that to just want to get to the business credits, to just know how to get to the money. And I'm like, this is how you got to start here. So when I started the Success Academy, that's what I started with, just all the things and my unique method of how I, my systems of brand morphing that I created. And then people would, through casual conversation, they'd be like, wait, business credit too? And I'm like, absolutely, inside and out. I've been using business credit for over a decade. What are you talking about? So they're like, well, why don't you teach that? And I'm like, because I want them to learn what they need to learn first. But that's why I created this boot camp, because I'm gonna give you what you want, but also teach you what you need. So it's a correlation of all those things. It's a system that nobody is teaching anywhere else, and it's 5 proven pillars. I got receipts, I got case studies, I got so much. It's the 5 proven pillars that these things is what gets you to that end result. And it started off with just wanting people to understand the importance of personal branding and business branding. And then it grew into this C3 Global Impact, because then I know now that I also want to focus on people or brands that want to impact community. Like I have a t-shirt company, but the thing behind it is motivation. Or like I have someone who does candles, but the motivation behind it is wellness. You know what I mean? So it's not about the product you sell, but more so the impact of why you sell it. So like this particular person, their candles are non-toxic. The wicks are made of this, this is made of that. These things are mixed so that when you burn it, you have this elevation of meditation. Like this so well thought out, you know? So those are the brands that I want to work with. And there goes that UVP we talked about, that unique value proposition of why your candle is already different, you know, why your t-shirt company is already different. So those are the coaches, the impactful leaders, the thought leaders, the consultants that I'm here to work with. I'm not here to work with everybody. I'm here to work with those people. And it started with just branding, but then it went into like a global impact. And that's the company's name is C3 Global Impact now.
I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to get on. I'm gonna have to get on that boot camp. I'm gonna have to.
I'll send you the link. It's a boot camp.
Yeah, I do want to, because it's always, I always want to keep learning. You know, and I want to continue learning with this and trying to, you know, grow it a different way. Now, you're women with voices.
Mm-hmm.
You got another thing that you're doing. So and which is, I love it. I love to see people who continue to grow and just stress themselves to the point of just, you know, the most that you can get out of it. So you talked about it a little bit, but can you talk about a little bit more of why you got into the program?
Yeah, so I created Women with Voices, for one, for the voice that I felt like they tried to smother in the industry with everything that I was doing, and always trying to like give a man, like I actually had a man that was telling people that he owns Brook Brothers. And I remember one of my homegirls introduced me to someone who was like, this is the owner and CEO of Brook Brothers. And he literally said, no, she's not. I know the man who owns Brook Brothers. So I was like, maybe he's talking about my husband. And I was like, are you talking about him? And he was like, no. It was this Russian guy that we were friends with that owns a restaurant and would hang out at our studio and started telling people that he owns my business. And I was like, oh, well, when you see him, you can let him know I have some bills for him, you know, since he's the owner, you know. But they just automatically believed him. And he was so quick. The guy was so quick to tell me I was a liar, when you could literally go on the website and boom, I'm right there. This guy is nowhere on the website, but I guess they thought he was one of those, you know, Rick Rubens, who you don't really see him on the forefront. And I'm like, no, he's on no front. This man has nothing to do with any of my business, you know? But it was just so much easier to believe him. For one, he's a man. For two, he's a white man. So his word was already more, I guess, credible in the minds of people than mine. And just walking into a room with men, people just automatically assumed that I was a singer or a songwriter. I got that all the time. No one would ever think that I was the executive, I was the owner. So that was a space that I wanted to open for like-minded women who understood those things. And also, we hear so much times when it comes to women that like we're catty. There's only a little bit of room at the boys' table, so we fight each other to get that seat. And I wanted to change the culture of that. You know, we don't need to be individuals, you know, queens on our own island. Let's start an island of queens, you know, and move forward that way. And then lastly, I wanted to bridge the gap between those that confusion between men and women, right? I didn't want that Women with Voices meant pro us, meant anti you, you know? So that was very important, that it wasn't a girls club, no boys allowed situation, right? So my husband is on the board, and, you know, we honor men at our annual award ceremony, and we're very inclusive. And I want people to understand, even like when we talk about Black power and these things, that pro me doesn't mean anti you. And that's the same message that I wanted with Women with Voices. And you know, I spoke to some people that was really close to me. I actually met Jordan. She's one of the co-founders. She's the Playmate of the Year, the first Black woman to turn bunny to Playmate of the Year. She's on Summer House, Martha's Vineyard right now, and she was on Winter House. She's my co-founder. She's one of my co-founders. And I ended up reaching out to her on Instagram, like, hey, I see that you like do journalism, and I wanted to start it as a magazine, a women's magazine. And then we moved forward into a women's nonprofit. And then Tamika came on, and then Chelsea came on, and my husband came on, and we got the 5 founders, and it just became this amazing movement. We're restarting our annual award ceremony this year.
See, that's like, are you planning on expanding that to different trying to expand it to different states or?
So we spoke about that. One of the things I teach, you'll see in the boot camp, is effective partnerships. So I'm looking in the best way to do it. So, when people ask, how do you do all these things? Your brand is so all over the place. Well, Warren Buffett told us, first of all, you got to have multiple streams of income in order to sustain, because if one thing goes down, there goes the whole ship, and we can't have that. But there's a way to do it. So there are options where I can start it from scratch, or I can take what I have and unite with 2 other organizations that already have, women that we can bring what we have and bring management and be a part of their team, but under our same umbrella, and have chapters in other states, under our leadership and under our vision.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either we do that or we start it from scratch. So we've been back and forth on that, but we also have people who are interested in other states that want to start chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to really figure that out through the rest of the year. And then for 2025, we'll have some bigger news, but we haven't done the award ceremony since the pandemic, unfortunately. So this is our big comeback, and we're like all things this award ceremony, this being also a big fundraiser for the grants and the giveaways, the back to school giveaways and everything that we do. So we've been focusing our energy into that, and then that will also lead into how we program out the free workshops and hiring people to create the partnerships and things like that. So this is a big comeback for us. We're excited about this one.
Yeah, if you decide, to expand, let me know. I can start getting the word out down here. I'm in Delaware, so
okay, nice. Right there.
Delaware and the Philly area and all that kind of stuff. We can start doing it that way and getting the word out, letting people know. So I got 2 more questions.
Yes, sir.
Number 1, what would you say to young Cloe?
Honestly, I be cracking jokes. I be saying stuff like, girl, buy Bitcoin. Invest in Google. But the same thing, it's so crazy. The same thing I'm still saying to 40-year-old Cloe. And that's don't confuse the process with the outcome. That's actually commandment 9 in my upcoming book. Listen, the process can be so grueling, and it can make you think this isn't for you. It can create imposter syndrome. It can create fear that keeps you stagnant, right?
It make you feel like you're crazy.
It will drive you crazy. You'll experience insanity for a little bit, Yeah. It's like we should put side effects will include. That's
good. Put that on the shirt.
But I feel like, but what helps with the antidote for that is really digesting it and accepting that. Mm-hmm. Do not confuse the process with the outcome. So when these things are coming at you, man, I had a moment today. I had to talk to the president of my new company. I had a moment today, when these things come at you, sit and meditate on that this is just a process that has nothing to do with the end result. And with everything, pressure builds resilience and it creates diamonds. So it's forging you for something. The faster you learn the lesson, the faster you accept that, you'll be able to evolve into the thought process that you need to get to, and you'll learn the lesson so that you can pivot to the next thing. And that way, things are going to always happen when you grow. We've seen Oprah say she almost went bankrupt opening her own channel, right? So who do we think we are, right? There's a billionaire. She almost went bankrupt. So what are we talking about? And when you really grasp that and you understand that, you don't feel as crazy. You don't take it on as much. You don't internalize it. You don't personalize it. You understand that this is just the process, and it makes it blow off your shoulder so much easier. We are human, and that's why I also teach tapping into spiritual faith. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. I believe in the Most High God. And one thing you got to know is that I may be able to have, even with the best sight, I could probably see maybe 2 blocks down the road, the furthest. But the Most High has a vantage point that we can't see that car that's coming 3 miles ahead, which is why we spilled something in our outfit and we're upset that we're late, but we weren't supposed to be in that intersection at that time because of what would have happened to us.
Yep.
So some of the frustrations we go through, just remember that God speaks to the universe. The universe is wielded by our will. So even though we don't understand why something is happening right now, it is happening for the bigger picture that you didn't know that you needed to happen to get there. The more we digest that, it's not easy. You're still gonna have your moments. The more we're able to move and grow, because if we don't digest that, that fear will allow us to stay right here and we won't be able to expand.
Yep. Man, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna clip that part because I usually put a snippet out to let people know the episode's coming. I'm gonna clip that part. And I'm gonna tag you and everything. But I got one last question for you. Well, before I ask you that question, can you let the people know your social media?
Sure, it's Cloe Luv everywhere. CLOELUV. CLOELUV.com, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Everywhere you go, you will find Cloe Luv. You'll find me that way.
Okay, and I'm gonna put it all down in the description too when I put it up on YouTube.
And I'll send you the link also for the actual boot camp, so you can put it in the description.
Absolutely, yeah, because I'm ready. But last question, everything that you know now, throughout business and everything like that, and just you and your personal life, what have you learned about yourself mentally and spiritually?
Wow, that journey, I learned that you can't separate the two. You know how some people be like, business isn't personal, but it's like, but if not, but is it not persons that run business, right? Like, isn't it? And I get the personal meaning, like if you have to make the hard decisions, I can't keep you here because you're my family and the business is failing. But I feel like so many people use it in ways to do things that lack integrity. And it'd be like, well, it's not personal. So I feel like I learned about myself too. Integrity is such a big thing for me. The value of integrity will go past a lot of the shiny things for me, right? Because it's safe. I like the sturdy foundation, people, things that you could depend on, that you can, and that's also integrity. Your brand's integrity is what helps the value. It's just because it's that promise that you keep delivering on. When you have an integrity, it's the promise you keep delivering on. So that's something that I value a lot, and that I showcase, which is why I eat steak, you eat steak, right? That's a part of my integrity. But I also realized that my love for knowledge so went past the books, because like I said, I'm over here reading the book of unsealed books of King Solomon, right?
Yeah,
And
I got that book.
You got that book, right? Great mind.
Yeah. You can't. Once you start, it's hard to get rid.
Stop it. You can't stop it. King Solomon, the richest man who ever lived, the wisest man who ever lived, an astrologer they didn't want us to know.
Yeah.
So it's all these things. And JP Morgan, I always say it wrong. My husband and my sister get on me, but the gist of it is JP Morgan, the owner of Chase Bank, the part owner of the Federal Reserve Bank of the USA, is the JP Morgan family. They own a share of the federal. That's why Chase don't go out of thing. They print the money. Yep. They print the money. This man said, millionaires have consultants, billionaires have astrologers. So this isn't some cosmic, is this some mystical, fakeness? This is a billionaire telling you, millionaires have consultants, billionaires have astrologers. The owner of Chase Bank, part owner of the Federal Reserve Bank that prints the money for the United States. So I have my astrologer was just hired by one of the big 3 record labels to work on release dates and times, right? So we knew that King Solomon understood those things, but we also know that he was the highest paid keynote speaker to date, right? So there's all those things that we learn about business, that I learned that creative talents are not taking the business part of it, speakers, coaches, artists, because they're not seeing themselves as businesses. But King Solomon, right? He was making like 4 million to 40 million for coming out on these stages, for sharing his philosophies. But people didn't see them in business, right? But he did. So learning that is like, listen, if you're a brand, you're a business. All right. Which means you need business credit. You need this, you need that. You don't have to just sell products. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have tangible things and be a small business in what that definition is to still function as a business. So I feel like those are the main core things that I've learned, and so much more that I will be sharing more on my IG. So make sure to follow to
Yeah.
hear these stories. But those are the core things that I learned. Like your thirst for knowledge has to be endless, but your ability to process also has to be just as high as your thirst. So sit and discern with it. Don't just read and get caught up with reading because you're doing the thing. And you have to know that you can't stay in the place of just learning. There has to be a place of not taking action. Some of those people who take course after course because they're in love with the fact of learning, but there's no action.
Yep.
So I think that's it. I go on and on, but those are definitely the things I want people to hear.
You've I can say that since we've jumped on this podcast today, that you have so much knowledge, like you said, and it like oozes through. Like it's the energy, you know what I mean? And it's easy to talk to you, and I can say that everything that you do, from looking at your bio and talking to you now, it's purposeful.
Thank you.
How you do everything is purposeful, and it has a meaning. And a lot of people don't do that. They just do it for whether it's the money or something like that. But it's you're giving of yourself to help everybody else, and that's sometimes as an entrepreneur, as a business, you might not hear that as often. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I want to congratulate you on everything you're doing, and
thank you.
And I definitely want to continue to network and connect with you, because you did say that you have you're going to have a book coming out, and down here in Delaware, this is the number one library in America. It's run by two Black men. They have everybody coming through there every week. Every month they just had a different world. They just had now they're having good times down there. They had They have KRS-One every year.
Nice.
They had Rakim. They had Nas. They had they got everybody coming, but it's everybody who has books. So
okay.
I was down there and I interviewed Tommy Davidson. So with your book coming out, I can let them know, they can get in touch with you and we can do
I'd love to do it. The rollout going to be big. It's going to be multi-city tour, and I'm going to have a keynote presentation that goes with the book. It's going to be an experience, because with Cloe Luv, it has to be the Cloe Luv experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he's probably going to tell me to be the one to interview, which I have no problem with. But
absolutely,
So I definitely want to continue to connect with you and just network with you, and we can.
I think you're going to really love the book too.
Oh yeah. It's funny, in school I never liked reading in school, but once I graduated, school, that's all I do. That's like
because it's the difference. Yeah, it's the difference between being forced to read something versus wanting to know that knowledge, right? When something is forced upon you, you meet it with resistance. But it's stuff that you didn't care to read. It's just like in school, some people it's hard for them in high school because they're forcing a system on you that may not be for you. But when you get to college, you can pick your courses, you can pick what you want to do. So sometimes you see that that change in people after they leave that systematic system, if you will.
It's funny when me and my wife and stuff, we moved into this house and our kids. I said to myself, I'm like, this is the house we want, that we're gonna live in forever. But one of my things was, it has to have a library, like a book. That was one thing that I wanted, a big bookshelf, and I'm like, went through all these houses and I'm like, no, it don't have that. And I know my kids were like, what does that matter? Like,
go buy a bookshelf.
They're like, it's a pool in the back. I'm like, but no, I want that'd be my piece. And when we walked in the house, I'm like, my God, it's a bookshelf. I'm like, this is what I want right here. Yep.
I love that. And then, one of the things we talk about is when we tell people how to manifest and affirmations, we don't tell people how to be intentional. We just tell them, say happy things, or I want money. But that was so intentional to the piece of what you want and how you want to age there. That I really love that story that you just shared. That I love that for you, that you got that. How old are your kids, by the way?
Oh, golly, I'm glad they're not sitting here. They holler at me. 13, 7, and about to be 7 months.
Oh, you got a baby. I
Yeah.
got 13. My daughter's 13, that I inherited through my marriage.
Yeah.
My son is 7, and then our youngest is 3.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, except for
Yeah,
it's the
except
same
for the
thing.
last one. I
My
got 3
daughter,
years, you got 7 months.
yeah, my daughter's the 13-year-old, then my son is 7, and then
Yeah.
my youngest son. So I'm like, yeah, this is this is
This is it, Michael Jackson. I'm with you on that.
yeah, yeah, it's. But Chloe,
Uh-huh.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for jumping on this
Same.
podcast with me.
Thank you for having me. I had a
Yeah,
good time.
this was really, really insightful and really helpful, and continue to do what you do. Those this whole time I've been looking back behind you with that success, and
Money never sleeps.
yeah, I'm gonna have to get me something like that.
Yeah. I got a bunch of stuff around here
Yeah,
in my office.
but yeah, I appreciate you. I'm gonna be reaching out to you probably.
Please.
I'm gonna DM you and see if we can collaborate on something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd love you to meet my husband. I'd love to meet your wife.
absolutely. Yeah,
Amazing for, even power couples to now mention
yeah.
that too, right? So cheers to moving forward.
You're on YouTube, baby.